If I'm not mistaken, Andrew Marr will be back on our BBC One TV screens next Sunday. And equally, if I'm not mistaken, many of my friends are back from their holidays, either their staycations or if they're lucky enough and willing to challenge all those PCRs and lateral flow tests and what have you, they're back from their holidays abroad. In fact, I know that one of my dear friends, the parish priest here in W8 in London, is also back or on his way back from Ireland. So if everything is going back to some form of normality, why not restart my YouTube episodes after the break I took for most of the month of August? And when I thought this morning, Sunday, the 29th of August, 2021, when I thought of doing an introductory YouTube where I re-enter the orbit of the Middle East, North Africa region, where I start thinking once again a bit more seriously and pointedly on issues to do with Armenia, as well as, I suppose, COVID issues, because we're still involved with COVID. I mean, it hasn't disappeared. I thought, okay, what image can I use as a background? And my first temptation, my first thought was to use Sandra K. Sohyun's Le Cri du Cèdre, the scream of the cedar, because of the centrality of Lebanon in my thoughts these days. And then I thought, well, maybe not. Maybe I should use an image I have in one of my folders of an embroidered map of Palestine with the different patterns that shows the whole scope of towns and cities in Palestine. Historically, why? Because we are coming closer to the realization that over the past 20 years, we have focused on the post-1967 Palestinian territories. And now we're realizing that if we really want to resolve the issue of Palestine, we shouldn't stop at the gates of 1967, but we should look at the whole conflict, which in some sense, though not entirely, started in 1948 and then moved forward from there in quest or in search of an Irenic solution. But as you can see, I neither chose the cedar scream nor the embroidered map of Palestine. Instead, I chose an image which I thought was great. It's based basically on Auguste Rodin's The Thinker, Le Penseur, which was originally commissioned to the sculptor based on Dante's Divine Comedy. And in fact, it wasn't meant to be called The Thinker or Le Penseur, it was meant to be called Le Poète, the poet. But if you're interested in the story of that statue and where it could be found, many places, and what exactly happened to that statue, you can find out with your search engines. Suffice it for me to say that if you can figure it out, and I know I'm not very good with these kinds of things, the image I have shows the thinker holding his head in his hand, and the overthinker holding both his head in both hands. Anyway, enough of that waffle. Let me get on to my episode, which I will actually call, because I'm combining everything in an introductory re-entry into orbit, From Arabia to Armenia. And of course, in the past couple of weeks, Arabia and Armenia have not really been on our radar screens, because we've all been following events, developments, terror incidents, misguided policy judgments All of that regarding, you guessed it, Afghanistan. And if Afghanistan has taught me anything or confirmed in my mind something that I had detected over the last few years, it's that we no longer make policies or devise policies on the basis of well thought out plans, people coming together, having some thinking, some even blue sky thinking. No, a lot of what we do and what we adopt as policies, certainly by the leaders in our different countries across the world, these decisions, these movements are dictated by social media. So if I have only 500 followers and I say that, hey, or even I scream on social media that what is being done is wrong, the policies that are being followed are wrong, nobody really cares. But if I have 100,000 followers, 300,000 followers, 500,000 followers on any of the social media platforms, and I say something, you can bet your bottom dollar, as it were, that somebody will take notice. And the policy will start to change a little bit. Politicians will start to justify themselves, no matter how intelligent and clever or puerile and stupid the comment on social media that I put. Why? Because I'm reaching out to so many hundreds of thousands of followers, and therefore it affects their popularity as political leaders and also their chances for staying in power. Whereas with a few hundred followers, you and I don't really matter. Anyway, Afghanistan is not part of my neighborhood, but I wanted to start with Afghanistan. Otherwise, you would have told me, Harry, you waffled on, you rabbited on, but you ignored the elephant in the room. No, I did not ignore the elephant in the room. Afghanistan is a very interesting 20-year experience on how not to do things, but that I leave to people who understand Afghanistan better, who have experience, hands-on experience in Afghanistan, which I don't, and they can tell us a bit more about what is happening there, what has happened there, and what will happen in the future post the 31st of August. What I will only say in this reintroduction today is to divert your attention to my own neighborhoods. And in my own neighborhoods, I want to point out just 2 or 3 countries that have caught my attention despite the August hiatus, despite being involved with Afghanistan via television, via the radio, via newspapers, etc., etc. The first one, of course, is Lebanon. Who could ignore the meltdown of Lebanon, the free fall of Lebanon, the political disfiguration of Lebanon? Medicines, food, water, everything that you think is basic to a half-decent life is in short supply in Lebanon. Politicians are still fighting it out. People were 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago, some people were getting excited because there was a new prime minister designate who might actually be able to form a government that the president of the republic would also agree to. It didn't happen. And it reminded me of some very veteran Lebanese observers who said to me 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago, Harry, it's not going to happen. And to date, barring a miracle, it's not happening either. So the first thing I want to remind you of in the midst of all this Afghanistan and the August holidays and the lockdown, no lockdown, spreaders, super spreaders, big events, small events in our own country, as well as what we have managed to salvage from Afghanistan ourselves, I would like to remind you first and foremost of Lebanon. Keep the country, its ordinary men, women, and children in your thoughts. More on that in the months and the episodes that I will come up with later. The other one that caught my eye was quite important as well, although hardly noticed, and that was the severing of relations between Algeria and Tunisia. I think that is quite interesting. Sorry, I'm saying Algeria and Tunisia, my apologies, I meant Algeria and Morocco. And the diplomatic relations have been severed. They've been tense for many, many years because primarily of two issues. The issue of the Western Sahara Polisario Front and also the Kabyle region in the north. So Algeria is an important country in North Africa, so is Morocco, and therefore this is something I'm following, and I will be coming back to it in future episodes because I think it is symptomatic of a lot of the ills in parts of North Africa that we need to grapple with. And of course, you know, I wouldn't stop an episode without talking about Palestine. And with a new prime minister in Israel, Naftali Bennett, and with his very active foreign minister, Yair Lapid, people have been wondering, is it going to change things? Is the course of events going to change in Palestine? Or is it going to be the same old, same old? Well, at the moment, the prognosis, my prognosis, if you will, is not extremely optimistic or sunny, because I think that things aren't working out at all. And there is a lot that needs to be done in relation to the Israel-Palestine conflict, one that I've spoken about at some length in the past, and I will probably come back to it in future YouTube episodes as well. And finally, on the MENA, I would stop with the conference, the regional conference that took place yesterday in Baghdad, hosted by the Iraqi president and prime minister. It actually assembled quite a lot of people, from the King of Jordan to representatives of all other countries in the Arab world. The Emir of Qatar was there, many representatives from the Gulf Cooperation Council, as well as the president of Egypt, and others were all there. And there were, of course, the side meetings, which are very important. And this regional conference was meant to enhance regional cooperation and perhaps also a touch of integration between countries that are often at odds when it comes to international politics. But one thing that really struck me were the meetings between the Emir of Qatar and the President of Egypt, as well as the representative of the United Arab Emirates. And it shows to me that what is happening now after the spat, the embargo, the blockade, call it whatever you will, against Qatar by three GCC countries, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain, aided and abetted by Egypt at the time. What has happened now is a realization that that spat, that blockade, that embargo was wrong. It backfired. Qatar managed to weather the crisis and come out, in my opinion, stronger and with more international relations and relevance. And the meetings that took place between the Qatari leader and the leaderships of other countries, be that from the GCC or from the Middle East North Africa region, indicate perhaps that there is a realization that they can no longer afford those spats, that America is not going to be there all the time, given all the talk about the end of a Pax Americana, which I personally think is premature. But anyway, it's been merged into this USA-China competitive spirit, but more on that as well, hopefully in the future in my YouTube episodes. And who knows, I might even be able to do it with James Abbott on Middle East analysis, I think these meetings indicate a realization that it is better to talk than to war. And also a realization that the blockade failed. And the GCC should come together if they are going to maintain the relevance, the stability, and the importance of that region worldwide. And of course, having spoken a little bit, having thrown a few examples of things I'll come back to from September onward, hopefully, regarding the Middle East, North Africa region, and having also thrown in a word or two about COVID-19, which is one of my YouTube episodes, because I'm anxious. I think we have moved in a different direction with COVID. It doesn't mean the pandemic is over. It means we are looking at it differently, and I'm a bit anxious of the consequences. But what I would also like to leave you with today is the third theme of my YouTubes, which is on Nagorno-Karabakh and Armenia, Azerbaijan tensions and conflicts. And here, of course, a lot of Armenians are aware of the brawls and the fights in the Armenian parliament last week between the government deputies of parliament and the opposition. They're also perhaps aware of the increasing tensions between Azerbaijan and Armenia on the borders, coupled with attempts by the Putin presidency in Russia to try and calm down tensions in order to move to the next stage of creating some sort of a Southern Caucasus reality that would lead to cooperation and economic and financial prosperity. But the situation there is quite tenuous, quite vulnerable, and I, as an Armenian, would suggest that it is better for Armenians to wake up and smell the coffee rather than waste their time with slogans that are so passé in the 21st century. Again, more on that, I'm sure, in my future episodes, September and onward. In the meantime, I once again refer you to CivilNet programs, coverage, interviews that are one of the sources that would give you an indication of where Armenia and the Armenian-Azeri conflict is going, both in relation to Nagorno-Karabakh, the enclave that is now fragmented and sliced into bits, but also of what is happening with this Turkey-Azerbaijan versus Armenia standoff and what the future might or might not hold. I'll leave you with this. Three themes have been significant over the past year and a half with my YouTubes. Emerging slowly out of my hibernation, contradiction of terms. Hibernation is not really something that happens in summer. I don't know what the expression is if you go to sleep in summer, holidaying, let's say, and re-entering the orbit of politics and regional issues. I welcome you back, and I wish you a year ahead that is full of hope, if not full of hope, with some optimism, and with some peace and quiet, rather than constant tensions, constant brawls, and constant wars. And guess what? Going back finally to my image, I like the thinker. I think the overthinker manages to get a big headache. Take care and all the best.